Y'all, I decided to drop a bonus episode this week because, in the spirit of visibility and storytelling, I have been sitting on this gem of an episode for far too long. When we think about storytelling, when we think about having the expertise, the understanding behind the value of storytelling and marketing, this episode does not miss. I loved talking with Tanya. She was in this really cute, outdoor space when we talked, and I was low-key so jealous. I was loving that she was living her best life and chose to still join me on the call. I'm so excited to share this episode with you all. Please leave a comment, leave a rating. This helps, again, boost the show. Let me know what you think, and let me know a tidbit that you found really helpful in this episode. So without further ado, here is the visibility standard. We often hear the value of storytelling in today's marketing economy, and I'm so excited to have an expert with me today. Tanya, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolute pleasure.
So, you support women in strengthening their storytelling, strengthening their marketing. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the work that you're doing now.
Oh, gosh. I guess in a nutshell, I mean, I've been a journalist for, crikey, 30 odd years. And so I was very well aware of the power of storytelling and how it can change, not just change lives, but also save lives. And I've seen the difference that it can make transformative in that it helps us connect with people, but it can also be very healing for the storyteller and for the person that that story resonates with. And then when I moved into being an entrepreneur, I started selling from stage. And I was very sort of uptight, I was sort of like, like an uptight kind of newsreader. And I was very professional and so forth and so forth. And I started to share a little bit of my personal story. It's kind of like the chef that never cooks at home. I would share everyone
Mm-hmm.
else's story, but I kept my story under lock and key. And I shared just a tiny little insight of that story. And the number of people who came up to me afterwards and were profoundly touched by it, which then gave me permission to share a little bit more of my story. But the big caveat I would have is that when we are sharing our story, it's not our full hero's journey. We're selecting elements of it that might be relevant to a teaching point. And then the second point that I would make, the huge caveat, and I fell for this myself, is when we're sharing the story to make sure as the storyteller, we've completely healed from what we're about to share. Because sometimes we think we've healed and we start telling that story and then we will lose our composure. And then that undercuts and undermines the power of that story and the transformative effect it can have on audiences.
Absolutely. It's like they say, share from the scar, not from the wound. And when we're sharing our stories from a place where we haven't even processed it yet, it will limit our confidence in being able to share the story. We're typically holding back a part of ourselves. We're holding back aspects of the stories and the emotion we might be trying to convey. It's so interesting though that you bring up how sharing your story attracted a bigger audience. A lot of times service providers, product providers, selling the actual thing is not enough. Like in today's marketing, it's like we've got to bring a part of ourselves into the work too. The consumer has to feel like they connect with you in a way.
Absolutely. And, you raise a really interesting point is that when we are service providers and we're trying to sell a product or a service, we can get locked into the facts and the stats, this because of this and all the sort of the features and the benefits. And when we start sharing facts, that unlocks logic, which unlocks the mind. But when we share stories, we connect at a heart level and that unlocks emotion, which unlocks the heart. And people make decisions. Yes, logic comes into it. Is it the right price? Do I really need it? But what resonates about that product provider? And that will be that empathy. That will be that heart connection. And I think that's the biggest thing that we face right now with AI happening everywhere. They can be very high produced videos, it's very professional, very slick, but the heart is often missing. And that's where that storytelling comes in to have that connection because we don't really remember what people say, but we remember how people make us feel. And that power of that story, and you never really know what part of that story that you're going to share that can have that profound impact. And I mentioned when we first just started about how stories can not only change lives, but save lives. And one time I was speaking from stage, and I'm actually an introvert. A lot of people don't actually think I am, but I'm actually an introvert. I really didn't feel like going to this event and being the keynote speaker, but you can't sort of wake up in the morning and go, I don't feel like it now. So I went and I delivered a speech. I can't even really remember what was said, but I remember one profound message shared. And that was because someone came up to me about 8, 10 months later and they said, oh, you spoke at that breakfast event at such and such. And I vaguely remembered it as being the one that I really didn't want to go and speak at. So that stuck in my mind. And I said, were you there? And they said, no, but I know someone who was. And you saved a woman's life that day.
Wow.
And I said, how wonderful. Like, are you sure it was me? I'm just a journalist. How did I save someone's life? And he said she'd written a note to her son to find when he came home from school. She packed up everything and she was going to jump off the Story Bridge in Brisbane, Australia, that just after that breakfast meeting. And what I shared in that breakfast meeting was that I just finished reading a book and I shared an extract from that book and made it relevant to the message that I was sharing. And the message that I gave her, it was actually from a book called How Would Love Respond by Keurig Ashley. And it talked about that if we're not constantly moving forward, we are by definition standing still because everything has a vibration. Even if it's solid, it's still constantly moving. And that message that if we're not constantly moving forward, we're moving backwards, resonated with her. And that son has his mother to this day. I'll just share that because you never know what it is that you're going to share. The stories that you share to illustrate the point that you're teaching, it doesn't just change lives, it actually can save lives.
In a world right now where we feel like social media or podcasting is such an oversaturated space, we might be saying the thing that someone has been looking for that isn't being shared. Like our unique perspectives of who we are as individuals and what we can offer. I really appreciate you sharing that story and reminding us of the value of I mean, showing up. And like that was one of the points that I wanted to touch on with you about you being an introvert. I saw one of your video, I think it was on YouTube Shorts, how you're an introvert, but you show up anyway. And I was looking through your Instagram and I mean, you share so many different facets of your life, your fitness journey, the way that you embrace life and love in so many different areas. What allows you to show up confidently online as someone who maybe prefers being to themselves?
It has been a journey. And the first tip that I would give everybody, and this is really what makes because I still have those moments and I still, I make these videos and I'm like, I look silly and I'm like, Tanya, it's not about you. It's not about any of us when we're getting on camera, when we're sharing our story. It's about who is sitting out there listening today, who out there is watching today that needs to hear what I have to say, what you have to say, in only the way that you can say it. Because I think a lot of people, we take, for example, fitness videos that I make. So my husband, a bodybuilder, came third in the nation. And so I make fitness videos with him just for fun. It's like, who wants to see a 50-year-old woman trying to lift her body weight off the ground? And then I think, but hang on a minute, who's there watching, waiting for permission to get started? And so I literally think about that one person. That's all I'm thinking about. I think sometimes when we're trying to make an impact, we want to make an impact to the masses. Well, what about just one person? What about changing one's personal life? So that's what I'll tell myself. Who out there wants to hear what I have to say and only the way that I can say it? Because there are so many experts. And for instance, when we were maybe teenagers and we had a fancy outfit and we look really cute, and one of our parents will say, probably our dad, I think you should go put a jacket on. And you're thinking, jacket? That's going to ruin this outfit. I'm not going to put a jacket on. And then your date comes and they say to you, oh, sweetheart, it's going to be cold where we're going. You might want to grab another layer. And then boom, off you go. So everyone has the same information, particularly today or ChatGPT and OpenAI. But it's that language that we're looking for. We're looking for that person who speaks that language, who understands our problems so deeply that because they're an expert in a problem, they automatically become an expert in a solution. So I'm always thinking about that one person. And then the other thing too is I have daughters. And so that would play in my head too. Because one day one of your daughters is going to say, Mommy, I don't want to do that. I'm scared. And you're not going to have legs to stand on because you'd be a hypocrite. Well, sweetheart, I see your point. You were scared to getting on video. Yes, but I did it. So I'm always wired for being a good role model as well. And then my third thing, I used to do this all the time. I play my theme song before I hit record on the video camera. And my theme song, guys, is Flying High Now from Rocky. I used to be a boxer, like full contact boxer. And so I have to get in the zone. And so I play my music and I get into it. And then I hit record because you want to capture
Mhm.
that energy. And then as soon as my energy would drop, I would play it again. I would imagine myself in somewhere, a location that brings me joy and peace and calm. And then I would go again. Because guys, you don't have to do it in one take. In fact, typically I'll do these days, maybe 5, 6 takes, and the first 3 are rubbish, quite frankly. But it's me warming up on camera, and no one has to see that. Doesn't have to impact millions. You just need to change one
Mhm.
person's life. And changing that one person's life has a ripple effect because they're going to be better in their families, in their relationships, at work. And then that trickles and trickles. And then they can also share that with other viewers. And Jazzmyn, if I may, we're talking about storytelling. I think it's also really important when we're considering what part of our story to share. Think about what is the platform and who is this for? And that's really important too, because it's not a matter of making a video that's going to hit everybody. There are niche markets. And when I make my fitness videos, my market that I'm aiming for are perimenopausal and menopausal women. So I'm always thinking, what do they need to hear out there today? When I'm
Mhm.
sharing video content, how to make great videos, finding the heartbeat in your videos, I'm connecting to the introverts. So I'm always starting with the end in mind. Who's going to buy? How do I make that relevant to them? What do they need to hear from me today to make that change?
Mm. In what ways do you feel like your career in journalism has set you up to be a strong storyteller now?
My my background in journalism is understanding, I think, probably 2 things. And the first thing might sound a little bit insulting, and I found it insulting when it was shared with me. And that was that every story that we had to write, even for a highbrow publication, had to be written for a 12-year-old to understand. And I found that really kind of insulting at the time. I'm like, 12 years old, I'm a journalist. I should be able to use big words and, sound all fancy and all that kind of thing. And I think that's even more relevant today because we're consuming so much so quickly. So keeping it simple. When we're creating a video, say it might be a 30-second or 1 minute or 90-second video, it's just really one nugget and maybe a story to back that, to illustrate that, to help that learning cement or to help that connection. And I think people cram too much into that. So that was a big thing that journalism taught me was keeping it simple. But the other thing too is what's that hook? Okay. So we're on the highway and we're driving down the road and all the cars slow down and you're like, I bet there's a traffic accident up ahead. Now there's no reason to slow down apart from people are voyeurs. And so you slow down and have a look at the traffic, but every video needs that traffic stopping event. So having that hook, because in that first 3 to 5 seconds, we all know what it's like. We flick,
Mhm.
right? So we got 3 to 5 seconds maximum for the viewer to go, what is this about? And how is this relevant to me? And that's why it's so important to think about that end in mind. Who is that market? I mean, even in journalism, we write for particular audiences. You have business writers, you have real estate writers, you have general news writers, you have fashion writers, and all those articles, all those news stories are structured for that audience in mind. So understanding that hook, understanding that need to grab the attention really quickly. And a really easy way to grab that attention quickly is to use emotion. It might be you laughing in a video. It might be a blooper. It might be a sudden change in emotion where someone's trying to, I use this example because I just did this recently. I was editing a testimonial for a client. And the bit that I wanted to start with was where she became very emotional and she had to catch her breath and you could hear her voice break. That naturally makes you lean in as a viewer.
Mhm.
So those are the invaluable things that journalism taught me that translate into this day and age into creating content for social media platforms.
I love that you share the value of simplicity in language when sharing online. As a therapist by trade, in school, I learned all these fancy words to explain anxiety or depression and learned all these interventions. And so when I was first showing up online, I'm trying to disseminate that information online and it's not translating, it's not landing. And so part of like the homework for me has been how do I communicate this to the person that I truly want to find? Like I'm really trying to meet people where they are. And that's that point about writing as if you're writing to a 12-year-old, it's how can you break down a really big concept into something that's really digestible and simple for someone to consume and sit with and really understand.
I love that. And that's the true hallmark of an expert. And without triggering, if I get this, I won't get the quote exactly right, but I believe it was Albert Einstein who said that to be a true expert, to be brilliant in your field, you can take extremely complex topics and break them down into everyday mum and dad language on the street. And that's the hallmark definition of an expert. And I agree with you, right? We learn all these fancy words, but when do we use them? I mean, I've forgotten 95% of them. And quite frankly, if it can be said in less words and simpler words and be more powerful and impactful, then that's the way to go, because that's how we speak. So we want to have that same language. And then you mentioned a really important point too, where you talked about all the different terms as a therapist and the different things that they need. And I think that was also a really important point to cover off when we're creating content for our platforms is we as experts, we know what our audience needs,
Mhm.
but that's not what they want. We have to give them what they want before we can give them what they need. And I think a big disconnect is when a lot of people creating content, firstly, they might not be creating it regularly enough or consistently enough. And then they go for the sell too quickly. And they're giving people what they need. It's sort of talking at them and giving them, showcasing their expertise. There's nothing wrong with that. We do want credibility qualifiers, what makes you an authority in this. But we also need to give them what they want. And they only hang around when we give them what they want, which then leads some people, a lot of experts go, well, I'm giving away the farm. Then they're not going to need to work with me. You could make 3 days worth of videos and that's still not going to showcase all your expertise. So give them the heart, give them that connection, show them that you're an expert in the problem and therefore an expert in the solution, and give them what they want. And then by doing so, they want to work with you and you can give them what they need.
Mhm. And it's like you said, I mean, we're all quickly scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. You might make that video once and it won't reach your ideal audience. You've got to make the video maybe 3, 5 times before the person that has been looking for your video actually lands on it.
I mean, I've got a friend who makes money showcasing products on TikTok, right? And she makes, a nice little income from it. And one of the things she shared with me is that what the trend tends to be now is people pick one item, say cordless earphones, and all they sell are cordless earphones. And they make the same video over and over again with different hooks, different outfits, different locations of their house. Because even though you have made that video, the person who wants to buy might not have seen it yet, right? You're not in their algorithm. And number two, they might not be ready to buy yet. And so
Mhm.
taking that one thing and just making multiple videos about the same thing, I think we feel like, oh, I can't make a video about that. I've already talked about it. But who's
Mhm.
saying your audience saw it? And now you've got new people too. So just do the same topic, slightly differently, different outfit, and Bob's your uncle. They're not going to remember and come back and go, Jazzmyn, didn't you do that video September 2019? They're not going to remember it.
I'll post a video and I'm like, oh, people are going to remember this and I won't talk about it again for 4 months. And I'm like, no one remembers. And that's when I really got comfortable, even with posting old videos. It's like, there's a bunch of people who probably didn't see that video and you might be tweaked it a little bit differently, made the caption different. But repetition is so important in the storytelling space. And a lot of times we get in our own heads. We worry about being annoying. We worry about flooding our friends' feeds or our family feeds when really, and I reiterating your point about impact, is when we're committed to impact, we're going to keep showing up. We're going to show up regardless of like who's watching or who isn't watching, because we know reaching that one person is what's most important.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting the number of people who watch but don't comment, don't share, don't do anything. And the number of people, I just had it yesterday. A lady was talking to my husband and she said, oh, you guys are such a power couple. I see you on Instagram. I see you on, other social media platforms. You guys are just such a power couple. You're so inspirational. She's not liked a single video. She's not commented on a single video, but she rattled off at least 8 videos. The number of us that watch and do nothing. And then you go back to your own habits. I'll often say to people, or someone will go, oh, I didn't get very many views on that. I must have done something wrong, or I didn't get any likes, or no one commented. Think about your behavior, right? It's not personal. That video just wasn't relevant or interesting to you that day. But the next one that comes up, you might watch it. And I think we personalize it when it's not personal. And then we forget about our own scrolling habits. I mean, no ill will to the creator. We don't fancy that video today. We're going to go and watch the next one. That doesn't mean you stop making videos. Keep making them.
Absolutely. It's that resonance that you talked about earlier, whether it's evoking a specific emotion or using that specific hook. If it can be an outfit that someone may really like and the color that they really like that will lead them to
Exactly.
comment. We never know what's going to resonate. We never know what the other person on the other side of the screen is like connecting with when we are sharing online. What is a strategy you would give to someone who's really stuck in their head about storytelling and maybe are worried about getting it perfectly and or being repetitive and then end up not showing up at all?
Do you mean like how to get on camera, or do you mean how to create the content?
How to
Create the content. I guess the first thing that I'd be thinking about, and what I do too, is I think about relevancy, right? So I think when we're thinking about making a video and we really don't feel like it, every idea that we have, we don't like, right? So what I would say is have a look at the time of year. Like, what day is it today? What season are we in? What knowledge could you be sharing to add to what's going on right now? Now, obviously there's a lot going on politically. You might not want to make a political video. A lot of people intentionally don't because they don't want to polarize their audience. But we are coming into the end of January. So there's all kinds of things that we could talk about that are seasonally related to that time of the year. It might be, if you're a therapist, it might be that we're coming off the holiday high and there's a natural crash, natural roller coaster dip, and you're feeling a little funky, you don't know what's wrong. Well, how about someone like yourself who's an expert goes, if you're feeling a little funky right now, there's no real reason for it. I want you to know it's not you. You're in the Christmas roller coaster dip, and this is very normal. And here are 3 little really quick ways to bring you some peace. And you give 3 little tips. So think about how can you get out of your head, have a look at what's coming, what season we're in and what's coming up. Of course, there's Valentine's Day. So a great topic might be falling in love with your business again, falling in love with your face again, falling in love with your clothes again, falling in love with your partner again, falling in love with your finances. Like, how can you turn what's going on right now in the world in terms of awareness days, awareness months to get you out of your funk, just to get you going? Something else that I do, Jazzmyn, as well, is when I see someone else's content that I really like, I'll save it. I won't replicate it, but I'll use it as an idea. That might be, oh, I like how they shot that. I like how they move from there to there. I'm going to save that and I'll put it in my phone, in my notes. I'll make a little note, video idea. And I've got so many of those, and I'll flick back through them when I'm stuck, and I will have a look at that and I'll see if any ideas came up. Something I do really love AI for are story ideas. I will put into ChatGPT, give me 10 fitness video ideas that unusual. Come up with, or maybe, 10 cardio ideas or 10 health tips that are underrated that no one's talking about, because I want to create. I don't want to just give the same old that's been out there. I'm looking for unusual ideas. Now I'll take those unusual ideas and I'll brainstorm them to see how I could make those work for me. So having a look at what's out there, writing ideas down as they come up, having a look at the awareness days, the awareness months will give you more content than you can even poke a stick at, let alone your personal story, which you'll have layers and layers of that also baked into it. And now you start to think laterally. And some of the questions actually, Jazzmyn, that I'll ask myself is when I'm looking at building out content. So let's say if I was doing something about menopause, and I'll go, okay, well, coming at the end of January, how can I make that relevant for menopause? Well, to be in menopause, you have to at least be, 12 months without certain things going on, that someone could be falling into that this time. This could be the year that could be happening. How do I know that? Well, I know that because I'm in menopause. Oh, and what did I experience when I was so many months out? So I start asking myself questions. How do I know this? What does that look like? What does that mean? How is that identifiable? So you're now taking this one topic idea and you're asking a series of questions. The who, what, why, when, where, and how. but every answer that you give leads to a new one, right? If I was to talk about jump rope, one of the cool things, guys, and also the more video you do, you can actually you can make money from it, not just from your platforms, but you can become sponsored. My husband and I have sponsorships, and one of them is for a weighted jump rope. So if I was doing a story this time of year about jump rope, it would be a great one because I would talk about New Year's resolutions and wanting to get more cardio in. However, if I'm designing that video for a menopause audience, my big caveat would be, guys, okay, so when we're doing the jump rope, we want to keep our heart rates between this level and this level. Otherwise, we're going to start to burn muscle. I lost 11 pounds of muscle despite working out, blah, blah, blah. So now it starts to build out the expert tips and it starts to build out the story. So I just start asking questions. My next question would be, what does that look like? What did that look like? I'll tell you what that looked like. Right. And then I'll ask, well, how did I fix that? How did I know that that was the way to fix it? And so you end up with more content than you could possibly put into one video. So you could do a part 1, part 2, part 3. That's something else that you can do too. When you have one topic that's going to go for 3 minutes, you could just break it down to 3 1-minute videos. And you'll see these videos on social media. It'll say part 1, and then you do part 2, and then you do part 3.
I hope people have a pen and paper and have just just saved so much of what you shared. If they're thinking about strengthening their storytelling, I mean, everything you just shared is so critical in the storytelling piece. And like you said, these videos can turn into money one day. They can be your currency. They can be your ticket into your next opportunity, your next speaking gig. And so really leveraging your content. I love that you shared ways that we can use AI to strengthen our storytelling, because AI isn't going away, and rather than fighting against it and working against it, figuring out how it can work for you to strengthen your storytelling and still being original. What is a style of content that you enjoy making?
Anything emotional. I love making people laugh and I like making people cry. So I just made my husband a birthday video and he cried. And I set out with the goal in mind. My goal in mind was to make him cry. And so I created this video. So I set out with the intention, make him cry. And then I wanted him to feel seen, validated, and honored in the video. So that was my intention. And then I started looking through my B-roll that would support that. And this is a really important one. And everybody knows this. When you're adding music to your videos, I always recommend you use the music inside the app. So inside the Instagram, inside your TikTok, always use that music. So I always recommend you use the video inside the platform. However, so that you don't get a copyright warning. But when you're editing the video, there's a couple of things you can do. You can record that video and then you can put it into whatever platform you're using. So you can do the cuts to the beat if you want to. Okay. And I certainly do that. And then I remove that audio so that when I put it on there, I'm not on copyright breach. The big thing is to watch the video, to create the video with no music. Because when the video is impactful without music, you then drop that music on and kaboom, you've now amplified it. So the big thing is, don't let the music do the heavy lifting. Create the content that's strong without the music, and then it'll be even more impactful.
But it sounds like your husband's part of like a really big inspiration for you in creating your content. And I see like you choose like fitness journey together. What is it like to be creating with your husband?
Next question. It's fun, but if for anyone who works with their partner, they would know that you're not always the best coach for your partner. So I tend to be a little bit harsh on him, which doesn't bring out the best in him. So that's something to be mindful of too when you're working with people, is, trying to bring out the best in them. But I really enjoy it because you're bringing the journey on him. And I'm a big cheerleader. So I like to cheer and showcase everybody around me. And I prefer not to promote myself. I prefer to promote other people. And I also like bringing him into my videos, the videos that I'm making for myself, not just for him or for his fitness business. But the reason I like to bring him into the videos too is it's a fresh face that's going to relate to my audience in a way that I can't relate. And then also, I'm not an expert in fitness. So if I wanted to actually talk about that exercise or that nutrition or that meal plan, it would be fake of me to just regurgitate what he shared with me. So I'm a big believer in collaboration in your videos. You can reach bigger audiences by bringing in that expert on that topic and then having an interesting conversation with them.
Hmm. I love that you talk about highlighting the strengths of your partner. I'm starting to build content with someone that I'm pretty close to as well. And she's newer to storytelling and talking in front of the camera. And so our starting point right now has just been having a conversation with one another mic'd up and letting what naturally comes out happen, and letting her grow and evolve in sharing her story online. But it is so, it's both meaningful and offers a different layer to your content when there is natural chemistry in the videos.
Absolutely. And I think, in that situation, and one of the ways that I work with my clients is quite often I'll interview them and I'll pull their story out of them. And obviously it's been recorded on Zoom, like we are. And then I'll cut it and I'll put it together so it looks like they're just sharing their story. But what I do, and this was something that I learned in journalism, to go back to that question, is most people, when they're uncomfortable on camera, take a good 15 to 20 minutes to warm up and then they forget about the camera and they're themselves. So if you are working with someone I would encourage you to factor in 15 minutes of relaxation time. Start rolling, knowing that you're
Mhm.
not going to be using any of that, to just allow them to settle in and settle down and have a look for, because we are, when we're staring at a video, things that wouldn't normally irritate us would really irritate us. If people are fidgety with their hands, you can see I'm a bit of a talker with my hands. But if I was fidgeting a lot or I had someone that I was fidgeting a lot, I'd give them something to work with. It might be a pen to hold. It might be a coffee cup in their hands. So just having a look at ways that you can help them get to be as natural as possible. So there's nothing wrong with factoring in an extra 15, 20 minutes of camera relaxation time to get the gold, because it's that personality that we want to bring out. Because quite often when we get
Mhm.
on camera, this has been my husband, at times, it's not all the time, he's great on camera, but he also has this on camera presence. And I just want him to be him because he's so
Mhm.
relatable and funny. And there's a time and the place for the serious, on camera presence kind of presentation. But social media is social media. So we want to be
Mhm.
social. People want to see you. So help your person relax as much as they can to where they are just themselves. Because when we're on video, Jasmine, we're literally just a couple of people having a coffee virtually. Imagine you're sitting down with a girlfriend or a boyfriend and you're telling, you can't wait to tell them the story, right? You just get straight into it. There's no, as I call it, foreplay. Oh my God, Miss Jasmine, you wouldn't believe this, right? And then you're straight into it. That's what you want your video to be. You want it to be that conversational. You want it leaning in. You want to be sharing something with your audience, like, oh, you never believe this, and straight into it. A lot of people take a long time to get into it, which is where a good editor can come in. But of course, when you're editing it yourself later, and a caveat on that, like a lot of people use video AI for editing. And I've tried it and I still have a look and I test it. I would love it if it chose all the right sound bites, if it chose the best sound bites. But as it stands at the moment, it still doesn't choose the best sound bites. So make sure you go through and you have a look at your content and have a look for that traffic stopping moment, that emotion, be it a laughter or tears or just something to disrupt the algorithm to get the attention of those that are watching. When I'm shooting video for my husband, I will intentionally move around and leave him sometimes be a little shaky. And I'm totally fine with that because I understand that's okay on social media. You want people moving around. You want to be able to see different things because traditionally in TV media, every 3 seconds, we would change the frame with the cutaway. It might be a side angle, a front angle. It might be overlay on screen. It might be some B-roll. And that's still a really good rule to stick by, is that 3 second rule. Once you go to 3 seconds, you need to give them something else visual to look at. And that might just simply be moving with the camera to a different background to keep that eye connection. And I know that we hate listening to our own voices on video. However, you don't have to listen to your voice. What I want you to do is go back and have a look at your podcast recordings, go back and have a look at your social media videos without the sound. How do you come across without the sound? Are you engaging? Because it's going to turn up mostly on the platform without sound. And if you have the right body language, they get a nice vibe off without any sound. That's when they're most likely to hit sound. But still, that said, most people consume without sound and with subtitles. But a really, really easy way to get better on video is to go and watch all your videos without sound, and you'll see. Like I noticed when I was selling and speaking from stage, I would do this a lot, which is in body language is very disconnecting. So I had to learn how to do
Mm.
this. Yeah. And so have a look for what is that gut feeling you're getting when you watch yourself back? Are you engaging? Would you watch you? Would you keep watching you? Or is your energy a little bit low? Because there is a loss of transfer across video. That is a real thing. And so our energy on video, we feel like us introverts kind of feel like, oh, I feel so silly right now because this is just too much energy for me naturally, right? But we need to do that because it is lost
Mhm.
through the lens. It's a distortion that actually really does happen.
What are different ways that you work with people in storytelling?
Yeah. So one of the most common and most popular ways, I guess, that I work with people is I help identify their content. So I have a look at the couple of things that I do, and which your viewers can do this at home, is go back, like go all the way back, right, to when you were a baby, and then travel forward in time and have a look at some of the milestone events. So, for instance, I was born in England. I grew up in the Middle East. I moved to Australia and now I live in America. Okay. So I've lived in 4 countries. That might seem really irrelevant, except I'm an immigrant and I know what it's like to be an immigrant and I know what it's like to start all over again in 4 different
Mhm.
countries. That story becomes really important when I'm talking with audiences. You might go, well, I don't have a contact list. I completely understand. This is the 4th country I've lived in. Here's what we're going to do. So I take my ladies that I work with all the way back, and we chronologic it. And so I'm talking about like even in elementary school, were you bullied? In high school, did you struggle in a subject? I failed English. Well, I failed English, but I almost failed English. I got a D. And my English teacher told me, Tanya, you'll never write as long as your bottom points downwards, except she wasn't that polite. And I became an award-winning journalist. Now, why is that important? When I used to teach people how to write press releases, they would say to me, but Tanya, it's easy for you. You're a journalist, you're a writer. Yes, but I almost failed English. And I was told I'd never be able to write. This isn't about being a writer. I can do it. You can do it too. So we're looking for all of those little elements of our story that we might think are irrelevant. So that's one piece. And the
Mhm.
second piece is I have a look at your expertise. What were you doing before? Like most people have been an expert in different vocations. Well, let's have a look at that. Let's have a look at what brought you doing what you're doing today. Let's have a look at that expertise. And so I help people find their story, find all the story that they've overlooked, because often we're too close to it. And then I help them put those stories together. Normally, I just interview them across Zoom or like StreamYard and record it. And as I said, I just cut it away and slice it and dice it for them. But
Mhm.
helping get that distance, because we tend to self edit. Oh no, that's a boring story. You just might not want to share it right now, or you're not sure how to share it or how to make it
Mhm.
relevant. And so that's something that I do.
Tanya, this has been such an insightful conversation, and I believe that my audience is going to take so much away from it. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. It has been such a pleasure talking with you.
It is my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. And guys, you've got a really great framework to go and create awesome content. So please go and help that one person today that needs only what you can say.